Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Yesterday, Cliff Sora shared a top 10 list of hot fusion restaurants, a vegan gluten-free mashup recipe, and a podcast featuring organic food trends. Oh, TMI? Too much internet information. That's oversharing. Cliff, Geico has something worth sharing with your friends. Like how on Geico.com you could save hundreds on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim. Gluten-free info that's easy to swallow. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Blog Talk Radio.
Join us for today's episode of the Utopian Realities Slope, Save Life on Planet Earth Blog Talk Radio Show, bringing you solution bearers with practical, proven, scientific ways to help you eliminate global level irradiation and extinction level threats from your body, and bringing forward the means to restore and sustain global waters, air, soil, and sentient life. Welcome. Greetings. Today we continue our conversation with Professor John R.R. Sirl, the godfather of free energy, speaking freely for the first time in 2 years. Actually, today marks the second time Professor Sirl has spoken publicly in quite some time, and these conversations are somewhat of a celebration of the life of the man who saved tomorrow, as Professor Sirl is called. For those who are just joining us or don't know, let us recap. Professor Sirl is the inventor of the Sirl effect generator, SEG technology, of which several working units were built and demonstrated in the UK during the 1950s. Born in England on May 2, 1932, John Sirl experienced recurring childhood dreams that led him to design a revolutionary electrical generator fueled only by rotating magnets. The opportunity to create his design came during his employment in 1946 at British Rewinds Limited as an apprentice electrical engineer. Further development of his design was accomplished during his employment in 1953 as foreman at Midlands Electric Board, when Sirl was challenged to build the unit or vacate his position. Sirl built the SEG. The unit was set aside as a novelty owing to the fact that England was restructuring their electricity grid system for nuclear and fossil fuels. Funded by independent financiers, Sirl continued development of his device, wading through unsuccessful offers to bring the unit to the marketplace. Although he has endured many years of harassment and government interference inspired by special interests, including the seizure of his working SEG unit that had powered his home for many years, Professor Sirl has continued his quest to provide clean, cheap, safe, and abundant energy to the world, and space flight of the sort that inspired Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, literally. A technology that also promises to ameliorate the radiation which is plaguing the Northern Hemisphere and Japan and threatening all life on planet Earth. What Professor Sirl developed is a revolutionary approach in energy conversion, an open system energy cycle of electric currents consisting of electron pairs. The Sirl generator operates as both a motor and generator. It uses the production of an electric current across a conductor moving through a magnetic field, induction, as it organizes and harvests random environmental electrons. It follows both the principles known as kinetic magnetism and the laws of thermodynamics. It works at ambient temperatures without destructive radiation, zero pollution or heat. Welcome, Professor Sirl and Mrs. Sirl.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. It's so good to hear your voices. And Professor Sirl, you know, it's almost unbelievable what you've created. And if you don't mind, for the listeners, I'd like to play an audio clip of you speaking about the device that was flown for the BBC. I've broken it into 3 pieces. Can you tell us something about that day? And before I start playing that, anything you want to tell us about that day?
Right.
Okay.
You want to tell her about the day that you did the BBC?
Today's BBC.
Yes.
BBC did a lot of filming.
Exactly.
Yes. There was one day in particular in which they hired 2 helicopters to film the launching of the model. And though I told them the takeoff would be too fast for them to film, they insisted that they had got a for each helicopter so they'd be able to capture the takeoff. But they missed it.
I see. Well, Professor Sirl, if you don't mind, we're going to listen to a few minutes of a talk that you gave about that. That is very good. All right?
Right.
Okay, here we go.
And I like to point out, an 8-force wind gale was running. The reporter's asking me, how on earth does that keep still? And I am explaining to him that those white sections, can we put the flash on the lower part? They're the sections of the body that's been opened. What we're doing, we're using the gale force 8 as one field, and we're using the lack of field on the craft as the opposite. And we reverse this to the back side of the wind, so we're holding it dead still. And we held it for an hour to show them it won't move until we change the conditions of the craft.
What year was that?
That's 1968. This again is about 69, where the BBC wanted us to do a demonstration. And this is what they did. They hired 2 helicopters. They had cameras made in Germany, especially to go out on a boom. They paid £80 an hour for each pilot. And they believed, and I did tell them they were wrong, but they said they were right, that they would capture that craft taking off, across the country to the final marker that they were setting up for the test. And that would be time check. The cameras are all in place, and they say, well, John, we're ready. You're sure? Yes. All right. So I gave the command for the engine to speed up, and she took off. I didn't put no support weight at the top. And boy, it went. And within 3 seconds, we got the call from the RAF radar to say that it is at the height for the test run. So I swung it round and sent it off to Cornwall. They missed it too. At Cornwall, we were notified that it had crossed the point. We returned it back to Mortimer. The time rested. All the money they'd spent was a sheer waste of time. We were lucky 2 or 3 camera people did catch it from the ground. But as you can see, there is a large electric pylon in the background. The speed of this compressing the air distorted completely the background pylon. We're not sure whether it actually rained from that compression. It probably is, but we couldn't get near enough to check. We were all too busy. Now you may wonder, what was the record time? The record time was that between Mortimer and the edge, the end landmark of Cornwall, it took 3 minutes to get there. Well, I would say we're looking at about 100-odd miles. And that was a model being withheld from the maximum speed. It missing anything. We're only just satisfying the media what it could do. And that was only a model.
Wow, Professor Sirl, that's amazing. Do you mind if we go on and listen to the next part? Is there any comment that you want to make on to add to what you said previously?
No, I remember that period.
Yep. Okay. Do you mind if we listen to the next part of it, and then
carry on.
Okay. Thank you.
No, because it's forced a tunnel. We'll be explaining this a little later. Here is, somebody caught this picture, they shouldn't have got it, but here's the transmitting equipment. Away in the distance, we are bringing a craft towards us. Now, I think many of you would be very interested in what you see in a disc shape. If you're shown a photo of a disc, if it's completely circle, the person taking it is looking straight up. No other point will give you a circle picture. We know, we have thousands of photographs. If they say that they were standing so far away, then that picture is a fake. If you see an elliptical shape picture, and they say they were underneath it, that's a fake. For elliptical shape, you have to be some distance away, and you're taking it at an angle. If you see a diamond shape, then that particular shape is coming right sort of diagonally towards you. And it's the way the centered diamond look tells you which diagonal route it was taken to the person taking the picture. If you see it as a long strip, then it is shooting past you. It is going parallel to you. Simple little pictures tell me a lot because we have put crafts to the test to find out how they look in a photograph. Now, this particular picture is taken from another craft. We have taken up because a lot of the people at the show wanted to know what it looks like from above. So we've taken the craft up and taken a shot. We also have taken the craft down and taken a shot from underneath. Is that on the next shot? Now, underneath is completely black. Now, that's because of the way they have taken it. There are points where you take it, where you can see the mirror image of the ground condition, whether it's trees, or whether it's big lumps of ground, it will color it. It acts like a mirror. When you see it's with nothing mirrored on it, it means that the person was standing at such an angle that you can't see the mirror image being projected by the bottom of the craft. Here's another view taken by the second craft from the top, because we took 2 or 3 at different points, so that people can see it still remains that particular condition. And the best, we took them in the evening, so you can see it. That's another shot taken from underneath. Again, the person taking it is obviously at a diagonal to it, so you cannot see the mirror image of it.
Professor Sirl and Judith, we'll listen to the third part later in the show. I want to turn our attention to the present and to the recent past, and I want to recap for our listeners who worked with us on Memorial Day. When we spoke on May 30th, we spoke about your October 14th, 2015 resignation from Sirl Magnetics, Inc., SMI, due to SMI's, to quote your notarized resignation, having been mismanaged and plundered. And you said you demanded in a notarized document that SMI, Fernando Morris, and Mike Windle immediately returned the $28,000 stolen from your personal bank account and make additional restitution and damages. And Professor Sirl, you also confirmed on the air on May 30th that, as you stated in your declaration of April 2016, that you were kidnapped from Somerset, England, and misled to believe you were moving to London, but instead landed in San Diego with your belongings, storage in London, or shipped to California, and that you were then isolated with all of your communications being first monitored and then terminated, and that you were misinformed, deceived, and lied to, and received disinformation regarding individuals' behaviors and Sirl company transactions that therefore made it impossible for you to continue working. Is that correct, Professor?
That is correct.
All right. And Professor, last week when we spoke, you also affirmed that negative information on the web directed towards any persons isn't true, and that you never authorized any harangue of any individual or company. And you had very kind things to say to Russell Anderson of Spintronics when he came on the air with us. And as I recall, you expressed gratitude to Bradley Lockerman for the film he made about your life. And so it's not the gentleman from Spintronics with whom you're having problems, is it, sir?
Say that again.
It's not the gentleman from Spintronics that he's having problems with. There seems to be
Correct.
some confusion.
Yes. Your problems are with SMI, not STI.
Okay.
Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. What she said was, the problems that you've had in the past were with SMI, Sirl Magnetics, and Morris, Fernando Morris, not STI and Bradley Lockerman and Russell Anderson and group. Correct?
That's correct. Morris
All right. And
lied to me. Lied.
He lied.
Everybody else except himself.
And the vicious things that are being said on that company website about Mr. Lockerman and Mr. Anderson, quoted as being your words, are those your words, Professor, on that website, saying unkind things about Mr. Lockerman and Mr. Anderson? No. What do you think of all that?
Well, there was a problem turned up, which unfortunate. Everyone got mixed up in it, and I got stuck in the middle of it.
That's what happens when you're the commander, huh?
It was an unusual situation where people were saying different things, and that made it look bad. It made me look like a liar, and I must admit my first medical lesson was on the mental condition of a human being, his behavior, that lies are believed before the truth, because lies are more exciting than the truth, and that's the problem I've hit.
Well, I don't know. When we're talking to John Sirl, the godfather of free energy, the truth is pretty amazing in this case as it is, and much more exciting. Professor Sirl, your resignation from Sirl, the SMI situation, contains within it a demand that your name be removed from their websites. Is that true? Did I read your your documents correctly?
Yes, I resigned because of the lies that was being spread about.
Right. And is it true that you copyrighted your name worldwide? Your name
Yes.
belongs to you, does it not?
That I copy Sirl with an E and without an E. So there are two copyrights. There are two trademarks which cannot be used until 50 years after I'm dead.
Well, is there a document where you signed over your name to SMI?
No.
No.
No? Okay. So let's see. So you've resigned, you've demanded restitution of what was taken from you, and you've demanded that your name be taken off of those websites and used by that company. And, you know, Professor Sirl, I was on the SearlSolution.com website an hour ago, and your name is all over that website, and they're giving the impression you're still part of their company, and even make it appear the website's 2015 copyright is in your name. So they're not listening to you, it seems, and not respecting your wishes. What do you think about that?
Morris has never respected my wishes, nor has he ever carried out my requests.
Yeah. I know you declined to speak with Mr. Morris last week, and I believe you said he's a criminal and that if you're going to have discussion with him, you like to see it held in court. Did you not say that, sir?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So,
Lisa, pardon me.
Yes.
And I can add to that. Morris and Mike Wendell were both served with certified letters of notarized documents telling them to desist in using John's name in any way, shape, or form associated with the companies. Mike Wendell's was signed, and the return received by U.S. Post Office was returned to us. However, Morris refused to acknowledge the documents and return them unsigned as undelivered. So even though we have sent him emails with the documents, copies in them, and showed that they were notarized and so forth, why he still refuses to acknowledge that John has resigned and that SMI, Sirl Magnetics, is not to be used in that way. John's name is not to be used in association with any entity, including Sirl Magnetics, is no longer to be considered a viable entity.
yes, well, it was rather shocking that Mr. Morris called in last week. But it was nice that Deborah Knight from the UK called in, wasn't it, Professor?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was really good Morris did call in, because that gave me a chance to make a statement.
Yes.
So in one way, it was good.
Good.
Because it shows what he truly is like.
Yes. It's unfortunate, you know, there's so much work to be done to have to put any energy or time into things like that. So if you don't mind, can we catch our breath for a minute after talking about this rather ghastly subject? And to do so, I'd like to take a moment and play a portion of that lovely song, The Eyes of a Child, that Deborah Knight made into a beautiful video for you. Did you know, Professor, that video has been viewed over...
That's a nice poem.
It is. It's beautiful. And, you know, it's had over 16,000 views. So
Yes.
beautiful. So we're just going to listen to part of it, and then we'll be right back to continue talking about how to move saving life on planet Earth forward with the man who saved tomorrow.
Okay.
Wow, that's a beautiful piece. Professor Sirl, how long has it been since you've been back to England?
We were there in September of 2015 for over a month, about 6 weeks.
And I was listening earlier today to a recording, an interview with you, Professor, where you were talking about people say to you, well, why don't you just build another one? And they think they can build them in their garages. What's the difference between the 1940s and 50s and now, as far as the ease with which you can get your work done, Professor?
Well, the difference is I don't have the factory space, I don't have the skilled personnel, and I don't have the money that I had.
Yes.
And it's gone up 10 times or more to what it was then.
Yes. And
It's in the right place at the right time. That's the secret of all success.
yes. Well, we need to create the situation in the here and now because this is the time that we need to deal with. But I know that it's, besides the costs of the materials and all of that, and the difficulties that were created by the problems with SMI, that kind of made things become more difficult in your personal situation. And Judith, can you explain that possibly?
Well, it's rather complicated, but let me try. When we went in September of 2015, we had to return to England because John's business tourist visa was expiring, and due to the concerns that go along with that, is that when it's expiring, one has to go back and spend at least 30 days in home country in order to then return to his visiting country. And so we were misled, as well as a gentleman that was in England that had offered us accommodations. We were told that it was unlimited time that we had to spend there and get things settled. And when we got there, it turned out that the person who was offering the accommodations was only willing for us to stay there a couple of weeks. So all of the things that we had gone to England for to try to accomplish, John's visa requirements as well as some of his health concerns, were presented to us in such a way that we couldn't get anything done. England was telling John that he had been out of the country for too long, over 6 months, and so he no longer had British residency, hadn't met their requirements for residency for social services to accommodate him in any way in England. And, of course, when we returned in December, because we had no other choice to come back to the U.S., we found that John was not eligible for any U.S. Services, social services, whether it was medical care or housing or anything else, because he was not a U.S. citizen. So it was like he was caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to say, okay, what shall we do now? And the real issue was that because we had to spend so much time in England to try to ferret out all these little idiosyncrasies of the British government, that had used up almost all of his monies that he had saved that were not misappropriated. And when we came back, one of the ways that we had to get back was that I used up almost all of my funds in order to accommodate that. John has a real health issue with flying such long distances, and so insisted, and for his health reasons, it was for his accommodations were on the ship, the Queen Mary, and it was a wonderful trip over. Coming back, why we were in the middle of that hurricane that in December, and that wasn't so much fun for me, but John thought it was very funny that I was sick. But it's his sense of humor. But it also cost a great deal.
Have you ever taken that ride, that ocean voyage, or was that your first cross-continental?
The first crossing was fine, leaving from the U.S. to England in September. It wasn't so much fine coming back. But hurricane and wind and rain, and it was a good thing. It was a ocean-going vessel instead of a cruise ship, I'm told. But at the time, they could have told me anything, and I still wouldn't have been feeling good. So anyway, but so when we've been back, the other thing that has occurred is that John was in the hospital in March, and he was there for a week, and the bill was $85,000.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And yes, and the curious thing about that is that they really didn't find anything of a serious nature with him that I didn't know before we went. But however, that's what occurred, and I have the bills to prove it. So one of the things is that John is just really stuck in this place of not having adequate funds to do his medical care currently, and really doesn't want it to come from me, even though that now that we're married, why I do what I can and support him as much as I can, but I don't have unlimited resources either. And so he's just really in this stuck place of wanting a stable environment in which he can work, as well as one that will provide stability and security for his health issues. He just turned 84, and in lots of ways he's in really good shape. He doesn't have anything really chronically like heart or diabetes or any of those kinds of issues, but he definitely is 84.
Well, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, too, because, part of the purpose of Utopian Reality Slope and to reach out to the listeners is to ask the listeners to contribute to the technologies and the science that our solution bearers are bringing forward. And I want to put out a special call to listeners. Professor Sirl has said for years that if everybody, and I say it, and I agree with him, I say it as well, if the 99% would each give $1 or whatever they can together, we can do this. But I'm going to ask you all directly as well to to contribute to Professor Sirl's and Judith's personal medical fund. I know that, there's Professor Sirl doesn't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid. Judith, you told me the other day when we were speaking that when he puts in for a married visa, that it's very possible that the UK is going to cancel his pension. That's like, he earned that pension. I don't see how they can do that. But
John can speak to that, but that is his concern. Your pension, that you lose your pension when we apply for the marriage visa.
Yes, I understand that if you're out of the UK for 2 years, you lose your rights and your pension.
Wow. So listeners,
And then you have to go through all the legal stuff. That may take weeks to try to get your pension back again.
wow. So at this point, I think if you need medical care, you have to go now to the emergency room down there in San Diego, and if it's really serious, they'll cover it, and if it's not, it's your problem. Is that the situation now?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, listeners, I'm going to encourage you to visit. Well, not just visit, but to please donate to the Sirl Medical Fund at gofundme.com/slope, and just leave a note that that's what you're making your donations for. My understanding is that, Professor Sirl and Judith need to, I think it's about $1,000 a month for us to be sure that the Godfather of free energy is cared for in this country. And that's a little upsetting. So, again, when we touch on these topics, I'm going to let us turn to some music again by Deborah. It's a piece called The Healing Machine, another piece that's dedicated to Professor Sirl. And understand, listeners, this is a celebration as well for Sirl's life. So, Professor Sirl, I'm going to play a portion of The Healing Machine, all right?
Right.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Professor, I have a guest in the chat room, scientist who's also one of our sloped solution bearers, David Yurth, and he asked if I would ask you what you plan to do with the technology you've developed.
Well, the whole purpose of the technology was to make the earth a better place for everyone and for the livestock we depend so much upon. Unfortunately, there's too many people don't want that to happen.
All right. He asked me to ask you, please ask the professor if he is willing to have a conversation with me about finding a way to preserve and develop his technology for global deployment. If so, I will call in. Thanks. Would you like, I think it'd be great if you and David Yurth got a chance to meet. Have you ever met David, Professor?
David who?
Yurth? David Yurth. Y-U-R-T-H.
Y-U-R-T-H. Yurth.
I may have done. I met so many people. It's hard to remember the thousands I met.
He's been my guest. If you look at our archives, David also has some recommendations, technology for remediating Fukushima, and he's another very fine scientist. So, David, I please call in 845-277-9359. And it looks to me like, Professor, like we have another guest on the line, 484-255-1072. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. This is Russell. Hello, Professor Sirl, my boss. And Lisa, hello.
Hi.
And I am so happy that he is free of that awful, awful, awful abuse and awful jailer who, took care of him with ulterior motives and not good person. It's just so glad that he is free now. We are, going to do this. We are doing it. We're getting his technology out to the people, and Professor Sirl his name is going to be known along with Nikola Tesla in every household.
Wonderful. And Russell and Professor and Judith, I'd like to welcome to our conversation David Yurth. Good afternoon, David. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
David.
David, would you like to introduce yourself to Professor Sirl? I'm sure you probably know more about Professor Sirl's work than he does about yours. So if you introduce yourself to him.
Hi, John. How are you today?
I'm sorry, you really have to speak up because of John's hearing loss.
So is that better?
Right.
Yes. Okay. Yes,
can you hear me? Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can.
So, how are you keeping today, buddy?
Kicking.
Well, listen, I'm the director of science and technology at a little research and development company in Salt Lake City called the Nova Institute of Technology. If you want to take a look at who we are and what we do, while we're talking, if you have your computer going, you can find us at www.novaiot.com. We have about 60 different technologies in our inventory, some of which are closely related to the electrodynamic generator that you developed and which you've had so much trouble with. My question for you is very simple. We're in the process of building and deploying several different technologies now that we think are very important on a global basis. One of them, for example, dissociates carbon dioxide molecules in the exhaust before they're released into the environment. Some of the technology that we're using to accomplish that is similar to the technologies that you've used in your electrodynamic generator. We've developed a system that remediates radioactive emissions in spent nuclear fuel. We've developed a technology that enables us to capture sunshine in large reservoirs filled with highly concentrated salt brine, and we're using some advanced technologies to convert that temperature into usable electricity. So, we're very interested in talking about solving the large problems, and the SEG unit that you have built has extraordinary potential for use in the rest of the world. What I'd like to know after all of that is, do you have a plan for preserving the technology and getting it into the world? And if so, what is that plan and how can we help you?
Oh, my goodness. Karen, would you hear him?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Okay. I want to know what your plan is and how they can help you.
Well, the plan was to get the technique how it's done out on the internet. But Morris obviously did not want it out there because he wanted to own the technology as his. So he blocked the information from getting out there.
So what can we do about that?
Well, the companies don't operate the internet. So it's just dependent on people who do operate the internet to take interest in the work and try to get all the information out there so people can see how it was that I was able to create something that other people don't seem to be able to produce.
Maybe, David, we have Russell Anderson on the phone, who's with STI, and I believe that the formal document agreement between the STI, which has I believe, is it a patent pending with Professor Sirl on it, and it's so they are preparing to go forward. And
the patent laws changed very recently, about 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's first to file. And with all the pods around the world that are gearing up and reproducing the technology all over Europe and Asia and everything, we decided it was best to go ahead and take out a patent in Professor Sirl's name to protect Professor Sirl's rights. So now that patent is pending, no one else can patent it, and Professor Sirl's rights are preserved.
I'm not so worried about the patent. I'm worried about the technology. What's your plan for actually building and deploying this stuff?
Russell, can you speak to that?
Yeah, that is all in the memorandum report, and we can get you a copy. That's from Sirl Technology Inc. /Spintronics, or STIs, or Spintronics. STI also works Spintronics. And that has a complete breakdown of costs, which SMI could not provide. I don't know why. It has a complete breakdown of project milestones and everything that's needed with all the T's crossed and I's dotted, so any investor, qualified investor, can invest with confidence in this venture to get Professor Sirl's technology out to the world.
So what is your plan? Are you going to build and distribute units? You're going to manufacture them? Are you going to license the technology to somebody else? What are you going to do?
That's the plan. Of course, the converter. We have I've been pressing our own converter magnets, SEG plates and runners in Florida, and also outsourced some of the work to a place that I found in northwestern Pennsylvania that just presses metals. But the results we were getting with encapsulated neodymium from Molycorp MagnaQuench and the other five elements were going together very well. And it's a level 6 square IGV mix. It's the same mix that Gunnar Sandberg uncovered when he analyzed a section of a runner, the IGV runner. That was the 6-element mix for fantastic power that Professor Sirl used for the 42 IGVs that were built and flown, many of them with 12-meter band ham radio control all over the world, and there's a great deal of documentation on those.
Well, I'm still not clear about what can be done. I'm not interested in investing my money in somebody else's company. What I'm interested in doing is finding a way to get these devices into the hands of people who need them.
That's exactly right, and that's exactly what we're doing. But as Tom Wolfe so expertly and aptly said in his seminal novel, The Right Stuff, no bucks, no Buck Rogers. And that's Professor Sirl and us. We're Buck Rogers.
So
well,
I'm
sure that David understands that as well.
Unfortunately, in this world, nothing happens without money, honey.
Yeah.
Well, the real issue, though, is if you have a technology and if it is genuinely disruptive, what is your strategic plan for getting it in the game? You guys have already gotten hammered several times. Sirl's been thrown in jail. His technology's been interdicted. So, what's the game plan for getting past all of that nonsense to get it in the game?
And more recently been unjustly in jail, held in San Diego by a crazy man. But anyway, the plan is just like any other invention. First you prototype, then you mass produce. And right before you mass produce, the stock price goes way up. So, get them while they're hot.
So let me understand this. You're going to run a company that has never done manufacturing before in the public offering space with a technology that's fundamentally disruptive and pretend you're going to manufacture that and drive it into the market. Is that what you're doing?
Well, it's not pretend. We can also use our good friend Elon Musk's company, Tesla Motors, as a textbook example of how to successfully introduce a disruptive technology and proliferate it in the marketplace.
Yeah, but TARP handed him $4.3 billion of grant money. He's in the game. He's part of the establishment. And Elon Musk hasn't done a doggone thing that's genuinely innovative. He's got a glorified golf cart and a battery factory.
I can tell you,
glorified golf cart that was Motor Trend's #1 car of the year for 5 years running. I'd say that's a pretty good golf cart.
but it's still a golf cart. It's not
a golf cart that is disruptive. Have you ever heard of a disruptive golf cart before? My goodness.
It is not disruptive. It may be well marketed. It's certainly well financed, but it is not a disruptive technology. A golf cart built by Elon Musk that has one of Sirl's SEGs in it, now that's disruptive.
And that's the goal. That's the goal. In fact, our first market is the boating industry. Since we're based in Fort Lauderdale, they're boating all year round. The boating industry, certainly could benefit. And then, of course, the electric car market, aerospace, domestic and industrial use. The uses are as endless as the imagination, which is limitless.
Well,
I just
don't argue with you about that. Potential uses, everybody knows that if you have a self-sustaining source of power, you can do all kinds of things with it. The issue I'm trying to get to here is that a fundamentally disruptive technology such as this, taken to the marketplace along a conventional pathway, can always expect to be treated the way it's been treated so far, right? You guys are crossing.
I would have said right about 5 years ago, but things have changed. Things have changed in academia. We're learning all kinds of things that we didn't know 5 years ago about spintronics and spin on a quantum level and how we can apply it to these converters and typical converters all over the world. There are converters running in Pakistan and India. Tawari has got over Unity on that the Palma N machine.
But that's another issue, Russell. The issue is you guys are in the United States, in North America, the homeland of unethical, amoral capital formation. And you guys are threatening to undermine the entire capital structure of the energy industry.
Well, how would little old us do that? How would little old us do that? That sounds kind of incredulous.
Well, you're not going to make it because you're doing the same thing everybody does.
I would disagree. They said the same thing. If you saw the movie Who Killed the Electric Car, they said the same thing, and now we have Tesla Motors. That's my point.
I'd like to frame this conversation. You, Russell and Professor, I happen to know that David Yurth is the author of a book that David focuses a lot of his mind on successfully maneuvering through the blockage of disruptive technologies. Would you tell them a little bit about that so they understand that you're not trying to be negative, you're trying actually to be helpful because you're rather an expert in mastering this morass?
Look, I'm not trying to be negative at all. Look, anytime you engage in a disruptive technology of this kind, you face the same people who have the same agendas and the same strategies that Ho Chi Minh faced 40 years ago. And he beat their pants off. So, what do we learn from Ho Chi Minh? We learn from Ho Chi Minh that you never take a disruptive technology into the market as a direct frontal assault. You never get driven into somebody else's engagement on their playing field with their timing, using their tactics and their equipment. What you have to find a way to do is outmaneuver this minefield. But we follow this all the time. There are 3,300 disruptive technologies that have been confiscated and impounded and classified by the United States government in the last 30 years.
And many of the inventors murdered. 46
of them by my count. And I knew many of them personally. So the question is, if Ho Chi Minh whipped their butts, how do we do this?
Well, the question then becomes, if you follow the logic, why is Professor Sirl still alive?
It isn't because they're being kind.
I believe
that
because
anybody's being
kind. And the entire group and the entire effort is under divine protection, as bizarre as that sounds.
Well, come on, let's not get involved in that nonsense. Look, you've got.
Well, it's not nonsense if you look at it. I understand what you're saying, but
stop. This is not about divine intervention here. This is about paying attention. You got to get across the minefield without painting a target on your forehead, because all of the fields of fire have been predetermined. We know who they are. We know what they're going to do. We know how they play. They're savage and they're ruthless and they're brutal. And if you don't find an effective way to not go from the laboratory to the marketplace on that pathway, you're going to end up dead and confiscated. So
what do you suggest, David?
Yeah, well, I'd be glad to hear a plan.
Well, look, the question is, first, what do you want?
We want this technology that this developed 70 years ago. This is the 70th anniversary of this technology. I've been studying it since 1986. We want this out there like it should have been 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
All right, that's a clear statement. The second question is, what is your end game? What do you end up with?
We end up with a beautiful new age that has been much prophesied and it's finally here, thanks to Professor Sirl.
And what are you prepared to do?
I'm prepared to do anything and everything I can as an employee of STI Spintronics, and everything I can to make sure Professor Sirl is never abused or imprisoned again.
And how do you plan to do that?
Well, we plan to put people together and
do you have a security plan? Do you have a security plan? Do you use encrypted communication? Do you have a bodyguard? What are you going to do?
Well, we don't have any of those things, but obviously those things are being discussed as we speak in the company.
Well, his bodyguard currently is myself.
There you
go. That's formidable.
Yeah, I was my late husband's bodyguard too, and he didn't pass because it was his heart.
I make sure that there's the fortress is impenetrable.
If I was in San Diego, I would gladly be Professor Sirl's bodyguard. And if somehow SMI was vacated, we still own 15% of it. We would go into the laboratory like a certain lost soul refused to do and do the work. And, Professor Sirl is a very intelligent man. He knows who is with them and who wants to just use him and appropriate the technology for their own personal gain. He sees through these things. And,
But what are you going to do that changes the dynamic, Russell? You guys are targets.
Well, every free energy researcher and company would be a target by that reckoning. But from what we have been told, we have contacts in the government and in the military, in the Army and the Department of the Navy. And contrary to what we thought, thank goodness, contrary to what we thought, they are all on our side cheering us on. They're like, you go, guys, you go, Professor Sirl. And we're waiting for this technology.
And about the time you get it working, you'll no longer be in control of it. You will no longer have access to it. It will be classified and confiscated.
So it's going to be like the same thing that happened to Otis T. Carr and the Utron, the OTCX-1.
You can't trust them because the inmates are running the asylum.
Okay, pardon me. If this is all undisputable fact, then how do we get around these barriers and move forward and make this a productive, positive endeavor? Exactly. I have been around John for the last 3 years now, and even though I was hired to care for him in a caregiver position, I am not without education and or information about how this thing has worked for the last 20 years. And so, therefore, what is the solution? I mean, rambling and being negative about it, seemingly negative, doesn't solve the problem. What is the solution, and how can we put it into measurable goals that can be accomplished? Benchmark, so that everybody knows what they're doing and that we can move forward.
Exactly. If you're open to suggestion, I have a couple.
Of course we're open to suggestion.
I mean, look, I've spent 40 years in this game trying to figure out how to solve this problem. And just in case it's of any interest to you, I've got the deepest teeth marks in my backside of anybody in this conversation, including John Sirl.
Wow.
I've made every mistake. I've had every issue and every challenge, that any inventor is ever going to have to run into during this lifetime.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the call of duty is to meet so that we can have a conversation face-to-face without spies in the walls or on the radio, and come to a conclusion about how to move forward. And
we do have access to some free encrypted communications tools that would allow us to have a conversation without worrying about people eavesdropping. That we can do.
Okay. That's
fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah. There you go.
And so how can we...
then, right on.
You know, I told you on the last conversation, Professor and Mrs. Sirl, that Russell knows we regularly have science team talks, and David is part of SLOPE. If you go and you look at our archives, you'll see the talk that he did a few weeks ago, and we also have been working with him with at high-level diplomacy to move technology through into Japan. So basically, as I hoped, we're having a science team meeting on the air. So
I'm not sure this is the absolute best place to have this conversation, considering David has said prior to this in the last few minutes. So I'm wondering if...
Sure, yeah. Do you guys have access to Skype?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So we can have a preliminary conversation about this via Skype. And if you will kindly forward me your email addresses, I will send you PDF copies of this book that I've written, so that when we do get a chance to have a conversation, you'll see where my head is on the subject.
Okay.
This is the most important conversation I ever have with people like you who really have something that really matters, who don't know how to get it past the checkpoint. And that's where the battle has to be fought. We've got to out-strategize people who are preventing your technology from doing what you invented it to do. And we've got.
And I have a contact in England that we met, and it's curious that he said exactly the same thing last fall, that if we were not terribly diligent, why it would be confiscated and we would end up with an idea, and that would be it. And maybe not even the idea by the time they got through with the process. So this is not...
There are thousands, literally thousands of wonderful technologies that never find their way out of the laboratory for all kinds of reasons, right? I mean, we don't really need to invent any new technologies anymore. All we have to do is figure out how to get our hands on the ones we've already got.
Correct.
And they're all tied up in the same way at the same place for the same reason. And so what we've done in the last 40 years is develop a different paradigm that allows us to chart a trajectory to the marketplace using a different set of rules.
Okay.
And it's working. So what I'll do, if you'll send Lisa your email stuff, Lisa, you can forward that on to me.
Yes, I will connect her.
Then I'll forward the manuscript to you guys, and I would like very much to have a Skype conversation with you so we can share some information and some ideas. If we can help you get this under control, then we have a chance of doing something that really matters. That really, really matters. And
the idea is to get the technology out to people and not to serve the greed of any one individual or group. As Professor Sirl said many times.
But that's what we all want, Russell. We want to be able to do what we came here to do without being held hostage to somebody else's agenda.
Okay, so as far as a timeline for the Skype meeting, how soon would you like to have that?
As soon as you're ready.
Okay, so can we say, 2 weeks or a week or what? How long is your manuscript?
We can do it tomorrow.
Sirl would like.
We can do it tomorrow if you want.
I'm not sure tomorrow will work. How about next week?
That sounds great. Just give me a day and a time, and my email address is dyurth@novaiot.com. You'll just send me
is in icicle?
Yeah,
O-E?
Ida. Yep.
Ida.
Nova, Ida, Obo, Tango.
Ida, Obo, Tango. Okay, got it.
.com.
I will send an email to you all linking you up after the show. All right?
Okay. Very good.
And David, I actually have a copy of your manuscript. If you don't mind, I'll get it right over.
Shoot it off to them. And so, how's your time, Lisa? Do you want to talk about this a little bit more?
We're fine. We have 43 more minutes in our allotted time. So I'd like to go back and ask Professor Sirl and Judith and Russell and really all of you how we want to use the remainder of our time.
How do you feel about time? Are you okay? Can you listen more, or do you need to disengage?
Keep on.
He's saying keep going, Lisa.
Okay. How about if we move back into taking ourselves into visualizing the technology by listening to the last segment of the lecture that Professor Sirl did on the BBC documentation, and then we can return to a scientific conversation. David, I'd love it if you'd stay with us, and Russell.
Yeah, that lecture's been on YouTube for a long time, many years. That's one of his best lectures on YouTube, describing the technology when used as a flight means, which was discovered by accident. This thing, it seems like whenever people activate these things that have built them, they always enter a runaway condition unexpectedly. That's how much energy you're cohering from the 0 point. And sure, Dave knows that the 0 point energy is unbelievably energy dense, more than anything known.
Well,
it's the source. It's the source. So.
The source, yes.
I should tell you, Professor Sirl and Judith, that I told you that after my late husband passed, I was contacted by individuals wanting to build out some of his air-to-water technology concepts. And so I started looking for the living masters of science. And I was fortunate to be introduced to David, who, like you, I'm very fond of because he's an amazing scientist and thinker. And the way that I found out about how deadly serious the situation with Fukushima and the global irradiation was, I was led in on an email conversation between David Yurth and another of our scientists, Gary Vesperman. And so you can all thank David for the fact that I'm doing this right now. So, David's a great guy, and he's a great shooter, but he's a wonderful human being. Excuse me for gushing about you, David.
Oh, well, the check's in the mail.
Yeah, that's right. The check is in the mail. All right, let's listen.
Listen, guys. I'll get your email addresses. I'm going to sign off, and let's get together on Skype in a few days when it's convenient for you, and continue this conversation because we got to find a way to salvage this thing.
Yeah.
David.
that's being done, and we're open to everything. You know, nothing is beyond the pale. We need help getting this done, obviously.
Well, I'll share some ideas and let's see if they do you any good.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay, y'all.
Thanks.
Rock on.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
We
Have a
shall.
wonderful day. All right. Let's hear this third part of this presentation by Professor Sirl.
This is Schiphol. The airport I did my international flying in when I took passengers to add weight to the aircraft. And as you see, we are projecting the 21st century. Schiphol is actually developing a new section to the airport. And I think you will realize that the 21st century is going to look quite different to what we know. John Thomas and his son has produced an image of the disc in space. These pictures are in the books, trying to give you the idea, the image of the craft, so you get used to the picture, so when you see one next time in the sky, you'll know who it is and who to blame. Here's John's illustration of what we think will be the pole shift in the year 2000, which of course we hope we got the disc to get out of the way until it settles down. Anyone wants to book a seat to get out of the way, give John the name, we'll book you a seat. I'm on the first on. Right, now we're at the end of the size. Right, I try hard not to make technical things hard. I know, I have to attend lectures, and you can fall asleep very quick. I don't like you pay to come to sleep when I'm talking. You can go home and have it free. When you come here, I want to try to capture your mind into the interest of new technology. I want you to think and look and see. When we demonstrate, we want those who are interested, not the people who cannot be bothered to come to find out what's going on. We want you who do take interest in technology. We want you to keep in touch, because we want you to see what we're doing, and it's only a short time away when we'll be up and running. I have told this organization that 1 hour is useless. After all, I've been lecturing 3 weeks in Denmark.
Yes. And Professor Sirl, again, you know, it's a very rare and wonderful opportunity for you. I mean, you've listened to us all talk, and I want to give you the floor, sir, to guide us forward as well. And again, to give us, you know, these are very dire times. You know, there are some who say that, you know, that things have gone too far. But I want you to paint the picture of a transformation that can happen. Would you do that, sir?
Yes. Any change was for the operation of everyone, because everyone is involved in the situation we now find ourselves in. Have to work together if we want to succeed. But how many people are prepared to work together? That's the biggest problem I got. Today, everyone is an individual. And they got to a point where they want to remain an individual. That is not the solution to our problem. our problem is we need to work together, everyone, to make a better place for everyone and for the animals we depend on food.
Yes. Yes. And tell us again, I mean, it's rather amazing that with this technology, we're talking about energy, we're talking about space flight, and we're talking about the amelioration of radiation and healing. It's everything that's needed. So how can people get involved, Professor Sirl? What should the listeners be doing?
Two things are critical. The first one is people together in every street to sort out the problems they got and which are the most urgent, needing attention, and then work to solve that problem. Solve each problem one by one, you eventually win. But unless we can do that, I'm afraid that the future generations do not have hope.
Yes.
And I think that says it all in one of the poems in my book. To the children cried. Give us
Do you have that?
Our future. Yes.
Do you have that poem, Professor? Can you recite it?
Not off by heart now, because that's so long ago when I first wrote it. We're going back to the 40s. I've forgotten most of it now, but did have it put to music by Barry Stroller, that wrote the music Much of the Day for BBC One, which now, after 25 years, is still running as the key music for Much of the Day.
Can you give us the gist of the poem extemporaneously, Professor? Can you wax poetic?
I say the books and newsletters, and every Prime Minister and President of the world had a copy of it from me, asking them to consider the SEG as a solution to our problems. Only one man really took interest. That was President John F. Kennedy. He really was. See America being great in technology, and he wanted so much for this technology to become a prime source of energy in the United States.
Yes.
I know most people never heard of this, but in fact, it's in the books as it happened. The communication between John Kennedy, how he tried to get America to back this technology back in the 60s.
Yes. And
he wound up.
Was alive. I think the SEG would be the common source of energy in the world.
That gives me a picture of a whole bunch more of enemies that may have wanted to see John F. Kennedy not survive. My goodness, this is bombshell news.
Of course, it was a shock when the roommate told me my friend was dead. I couldn't believe it until they put the news on, and the news said he'd been shot.
Where were you, Professor Sirl? I remember exactly where I was. I was a little girl that I remember where I was. Where were you?
I was working at Vanderbilt Products in Maidenhead, United Kingdom. On night work.
Yeah.
I was 8.5 years old.
It was
I
a shock.
did this. Yeah.
Because he was the ideal man to push America forward. But he depended on the support of his overheads that directed him. And they said, no, we can't understand this technology because there's no inertia. That's beyond our understanding. And there's nothing he could do. Because he depended on them saying, yes, they understand the technology.
Yes.
Yeah, they were not taught that inertia is solely dependent on net charge, not mass or density of material.
Yes,
But net charge.
the trouble is, we all seem to think we know a lot, but knowing a lot and understanding it is two different things. I know a lot, but it doesn't mean I understand a lot. But it does mean that I know about it. But some I will understand, and some I will not understand. I can't understand when the world is in such crisis on energy, pollution, and things of this nature that people could sit there and do nothing. That really beats my understanding.
Me too.
Mine too. Me too. That's why we're all meeting. That's why we're all meeting here. And Professor Sirl and Judith, I think we discussed, and I hope you're willing, going forward to regularly come and have Professor Sirl speak and give updates and words of wisdom as we go forward with Slope, because, and I'm glad that you got to meet David Yurth, because he is working on it, and he's not giving up either. And I'm glad that in his own somewhat grouchy way, he joined us and extended his hand to be of assistance in seeing this through, because I know that in these perilous times we need the SCG now more than ever. We need it yesterday.
We need it desperately yesterday.
Yes.
I remember I do not down anybody who say they're developing a project. Everybody has the right to try to make what they believe will work. And that's a right I cannot take from anyone. All I can do is wish them luck and hope that whatever it is they're trying to achieve, they will achieve it.
Yes. Well,
Hear, hear.
and I would, I put out a special call. I think I told both of you that I found myself friending or being friended by Mr. Elon Musk of Tesla on Facebook while I was, on, and I wasn't sure it was really him, but it was, and I put out a call to those people who can, like right now, see to it that the SEG and the technology gets built to help save life on planet Earth, because otherwise we're just going to keep beating the drum and getting the word out to the global population of $7.4 billion. As Professor Sirl has said, and I agree with him, this is true, if everyone just gave $1, we'd have more than enough resources to fund the solutions. And again, we've set up the GoFundMe.com/Slope, and I'd encourage you to visit that so that your donations to help bring the work of Professor Sirl and our team of Solution Bearer scientists goes forward. So,
have one less bottled water today. One less bottled water, and we can have a new civilization.
This is true. This is true. Judith,
that's
is there...
answer to the problem. Some are more harder to find, but they're there, and we have to seek and hunt and find them.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And so today is a day to celebrate you, Professor
Celebrate
Sirl.
Professor Sirl and his freedom.
Yes. And for us to say thank you. And for, it started with a dream. It started with a dream. And
Two dreams.
It's still amazing. I think it amazes everyone, Professor Sirl, that within those dreams of hopscotch, a whole new understanding of math emerged. It certainly shows the relation between that which is invisible and greater than us and we. So, did you have any idea when you were a small boy and you were having those dreams? How did you know those dreams were so important?
Well, it wasn't so much. The fact was that if you keep having the same dreams, especially the same, in an order of function, then they must mean more than just a dream. They have to have a purpose behind them. The purpose to make you think, make you understand something which you're missing. And that is what the dream did. It told me to look at the squares. There's something wrong with them. And today, professors, or they call themselves professors, still make the same mistake when they talk about the squares. What they forget is that there might be somebody sitting in the audience that know the squares. And now that they're not telling the truth.
Yes. Professor Sirl, how many of those ships do you think are still up there orbiting?
Well, as far as we're concerned, craft don't deteriorate. And therefore, they have to be out there with their orbits, which balances between the forces acting on them. Scientists calculate that Mars orbit is most like the right orbit that they would be orbiting on.
Wow.
But because they're small in relationship, they would be hard to spot.
Yes.
They're stealthy anyway.
And is it true that the inspiration for Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek came from his understanding of Sirl technology?
Well, this should be odd that suddenly, in that period, I get a lot of publicity. Star Trek turns up and other programs, Scarlet, whatever they called him, and one or two other films turn up, and all those songs that came were obviously created due to the massive publicity that was targeted at me.
Yes.
But remember, the great story for the media was Russia and America were having so much trouble getting the rocket up into space. So it created an opportunity for a new range of songs, music.
Yes.
And today, going to the moon is nothing. Going to Mars is really nothing. So it don't create the songs heard back there in the 60s with the ITV, then called a Liberty Disc.
Yes. But still and my late husband, Dr. Vagrisotto, used to remark to me about how much more efficient and faster the electromagnetic acceleration is than these rockets. And will you talk again about the difference in terms of how they move and how the SEG moves through space as opposed to a rocket?
Yes. The whole picture of the SEG is very interesting. Only if you really know science does it become interesting. Anybody who thinks they know and understand science, it will not be interesting because to them it don't exist or it cannot exist. Real scientists who sit back and think, they realize that there is something in what is being stated. It only needs to be investigated and put into some language that scientists understand.
Well, it's really talking about instead of blasting or cutting through space, you're traveling on rivers of energy. Is that not correct? Something like that?
Yes. The idea of the average person on energy, I think water running through pipe, and it's not. Energy is an interesting subject. It's a very long subject. All I can say to shorten it, it's basically electrons in motion. It's perhaps the easiest way to explain it, but involves a lot of understanding.
And repeat for our listeners, for those who weren't with us last time, how it is that the byproduct of the SEG remediates, or I should say ameliorates, radiation. What happens that we go from such a disrupted, dangerous, long-term problem as radioactivity to back to a situation of peace and stability within the natural world? How does that happen?
Well, the SEG, it's the way it functions. It's important. If you got an SEG large enough, that is of enough weight to override the radiation, that you can beat the radiation and neutralize it. If your mass is too low, then of course you cannot overcome the radiation. Your mass must be heavy enough. And if you notice anything that's demonstrated on energy, the heavier it is, the better it works.
So we still have a chance to stop this global extinction that we're all living through?
We always got the opportunity of problems that we have created. But the question is, takes the willpower of everybody to achieve it.
Yes. Your thoughts, Russ? You still with us?
Interesting what you said about Gene Roddenberry, where he got his ideas for Star Trek. Well, actually, the ideas for Star Trek and a couple other shows came from the movie that came out exactly 60 years ago called Forbidden Planet. And that was by MGM in 1956. That presented basically IGV, and the IGV as in the C-57D Starship and IGV SEARL Starship, the upper and lower shells are equal. A couple of things that are different. There's no lower and upper dome structure. You don't need it. It did correctly present an electromagnetic drive system, but instead of out near the rim of the craft, as in the SEG, this electromagnetic drive system was depicted as a simple, permanent, very massive, rotating permanent magnet with a primary and secondary, like a Tesla coil with an iron core instead of an air core. And basically, you're utilizing electrodynamics for propulsion instead of aerodynamics and internal combustion. But anyway, back in 1956, this is one of the big, really, really high-budget science fiction movies from MGM, and became the triumvirate of the captain, the doctor, and the exec. Was the same thing that Gene Roddenberry modeled for Star Trek, having come from a World War II generation. He was a bomber pilot and the chain of command and everything. So it seemed natural that a quasi-military structure would be ideal for a spacefaring organization, and that's probably what Professor Sirl has in mind as a structure for when we get these things up and operational for the benefit of mankind, for aerospace, and to get us off the planet when we need to. Say an asteroid is coming, or God forbid, some kind of biological plague or contamination. We can preserve mankind on any planet in the solar system where life is able to exist, and there's probably a lot of places, and as well as on other planets around other stars. As we said, there's no inertia because of the charge. There's no inertia, so you're immune to the mass dilation and time dilation you normally get in any kind of fuel-burning spacecraft or even an electrical propulsion or ion drive. This is pure motion. And, I remember that Northrop Grumman, when it was just Northrop Corporation, in the late 1960s, they did experiments with electrified airfoils and found out that they eliminated skin heating and eliminated sonic boom. So the IGV is doing the same thing. And, it's just thank goodness that Professor Sirl, has this technology, and we can get it out to people if we're savvy about it, if we're ingenious about it. We can get it out to people before they even know it's out.
Yes. Yes.
And then it can't be suppressed ever. Cat's out of the bag forever.
Well, is there any reason to...
This is Tesla technology. This is breakaway civilization technology that has been denied to Earth humanity for the past 50, 60 years. And Professor Sirl is he is the only person I know who gives more to other people, such as us, such as mankind, than to himself. He, is such an incredible humanitarian, and people, see that as a sign of weakness. A lot of people see that as a sign of weakness and seek to take advantage of him and abuse him for their own personal gain. Well, that phase is over, and we are now, going forward. And Professor Sirl, of course, will benefit with every person who's listened to this broadcast and not listening to this broadcast will benefit, just as the people who converted their houses to solar by putting panels up on the roof and that sort of thing have benefited by being off the grid and off the grid vulnerabilities. And, the less trees we cut down, the better. The less emissions we're putting into the atmosphere, the better. And thank God Professor Sirl is here to offer this technology to the world one last time. Thank you, Professor. We all love you, and we've missed you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
So once again, I'm going to encourage listeners to, if you're interested in knowing more, you can email whitebuffalonation@gmail.com, and you can make your contribution to this work through the GoFundMe /Slope. And we're going to, Professor Sirl, and Judith, is there anything more that you'd like to say to the listeners? And then I understand that Old Lang Syne is one of your favorite pieces of music, and I'm going to have that be one of our theme songs for these visits that we're going to continue to have, I hope.
Yes. One of my most loved bit of music, because it says everything which I stand for.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll close with Old Lang Syne, and please join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock when our guest will be Bobri Oren of Folium PX, giving us an update on how it's going, getting his bioremediation product that helps eliminate heavy metals from the body and causing tremendous healing, and he's been offering it to municipalities whose waters are not fit to drink. So we'll be visiting with Bobri Oren tomorrow. And now let's close with Old Lang Syne. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. A biento. Thank you for joining us. Together, let's save life on planet Earth. That's yours, mine, and all of ours, on and in the land, waters, and air. Thanks for joining us. Till next time, this is Lisa Wolf for Slope. Save life on planet Earth. Earth Aid now. And I'm going to, since we have about 5 minutes left, I'm going to let Professor Sirl and Judith and Russell say farewell one more time, and then I'm going to let a longer version of Through the Eyes of a Child close this program. Thank you again, Professor and Judith.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Goodbye. In the words of my Chinese brethren, shisha means thank you.
Thank you. And blessings to everyone. May we all come together, as Professor Sirl says, it's going to take all of us to address what we face. But we do have the solution. Just need to join together.
Break the spell.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your sharing has tipped the sugar scale and turned into oversharing. But have no fear, princess. Geico has something worth sharing with your internet kingdom, like how you could save hundreds on your car insurance just by visiting geico.com. No magic wand required. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Yesterday, Cliff Sora shared a top 10 list of hot fusion restaurants, a vegan gluten-free mashup recipe, and a podcast featuring organic food trends. Oh, TMI, too much internet information. That's oversharing. Cliff, Geico has something worth sharing with your friends. Like how on geico.com you could save hundreds on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim. Gluten-free info that's easy to swallow. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.